Welcome to Prophetic.tv with your host, Elijah List founder, Steve Shultz. Prophetic.tv is a production of Elijah List Ministries. To find out more, log on to Prophetic.tv. Today, Steve's guest is prophetic author and speaker, Stacey Campbell.
So we're here with Stacey Campbell. Stacey, you are with an organization called?
Be a Hero.
Okay, so let's get right into that. What is that?
Well, in order to tell you about it today, I should go back a few years.
Okay.
That many years ago, the Lord began prophesying to us when we were still a Baptist church about the children, about the next generation. And at the time, we had no comprehension, and all that we knew was like children's ministry. So, I started teaching Sunday school. But that understanding has evolved through prayer, through meditating on the Word. My husband was praying Job 29 for months on end for about 3 or 4 years ago. And suddenly it dawned on him. He said, when have I made the widow's heart sing? When have I helped the fatherless? And so he realized that even though he'd been a pastor for like 15, 17 years, he did nothing for the poor. So that set him on a quest. And since that time, we've started an organization. And he's written a book with the Salvation Army pastor called Be a Hero, The Battle for Mercy and Social Justice.
Wow.
But the thesis of it is that the great global harvest that awaits us, that, has been prophesied from every tongue, every tribe, every people, every nation, that just simple demographics, where the population base of the earth lives right now, means that it's going to come from women and children at risk. So God is now highlighting, and the epicenter of Christianity, as far as numbers and influence, is now south of the equator. And that's where the revivals are happening, the million-strong prayer meetings are happening, the miracles are happening. God is doing something hot, hot, hot.
So we're here in the United States all saying we're praying for revival to break out in the world without the realization that revival has completely broken out.
Revival is breaking out in the world.
Okay.
In fact, they say in the decade of the 90s, more people came to Christ in the decade of the 90s than all the rest of Christian history put together. I mean, since the time of Jesus.
Wow.
Oh, actually more marters, and then also more...
Really? More martyrs?
Yeah, more martyrs. More martyrs in the decade of the 90s, yeah.
So you talked with me before we started. You talked about the children and this convergence thing. And you read a book. Tell me about this book thing.
Well, we had all these prophecies, and what we didn't understand at the time, we didn't understand the magnitude of what God was preparing on the earth. We were a little Baptist church, and the prophetic fell, and he started talking about two things, prayer and children. The children! And I had all these prophecies on the children. There's coming a generation. In fact, I have it on this CD here called Extreme Disciples with Lou Engle. This prophecy that the Lord gave me about there's coming a generation that is going to change society, and society will not change them. Like Daniel was in the middle of Babylon, like Joseph was in the middle of Egypt, like John the Baptist in the middle of the religious. There is an emerging generation. Now, that I had those prophecies that I've carried them since 1987 over and over again, different forms, different ways. I think that CD was produced in, the late 90s. In 2004, I read a book published in 2004, called Millennials Rising, The Next Great Generation.
Now, this is not by a Christian.
It's a totally secular sociological book, that is, analyzing the millennials. And it says every fourth or fifth generation, there is a generation that emerges that they call a, quote, hero generation. Be a hero. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a hero generation, and a whole chapter of the book is called A Capacity for Greatness. And it talks about this phenomenon that happens in sociology, which I believe comes back to, I will bless you to the third and fourth generation, and I will curse you to the third and fourth generation.
So are you saying that this secularist writing, research, is getting a download from God?
I believe he's just analyzing what God is doing on the earth.
Okay.
That's something that God has prophesied for 20 years. Now the sociologists are catching up on. Hey, what's going on here? What's happening? But this generation is emerging, and you'll see it everywhere. It's like Bono, it's Brad Pitt, it's Bill Clinton. They want to help the world. They want to change the world. There's something that's God's putting in the air of a cultural key for, I believe, for evangelism and the great end time harvest. So those of us who have known this is coming, coming. We've got to get out there and lead the way, because it's part of what God is doing on the earth, trying to reap the billion-soul harvest that, Bob Jones has prophesied for decades, that a billion-soul harvest. And if there's going to be a billion-soul harvest, it's going to come from poor women and children at risk.
So what kind of things are you doing? How are you launching this?
Well, when my husband got this idea, we've been pastors for like 17 years and had done nothing for the poor. But he was praying Job 29, meditating on the word, and he realized that we were doing nothing for the fatherless and for the orphans. So God began to shift his heart, and he just began preaching on it. And one thing led to another. And currently, we now, through our organization, Be a Hero, sponsor 4,000 orphans every single day. They eat, they go to school, they do that because we partner with other organizations that are doing it. And we've raised almost $2 million for orphanages, for schools, for projects. And it's just exponentially growing all over the earth, because God has put it as a cultural key. The world wants to help the poor. And God is causing the church to realize that this is where the harvest is coming. This is where his heart is. It's the highway byway revival. It's what he's doing on the earth. But concurrent with that is this generation. So, I believe, harvesters, not just the harvest, but the harvesters.
You've got to have people that go out there and do the work, do the stuff.
Right. And so God told me in September of this year, beginning of September, I was praying in a prayer time, and the Lord said, there's a 2 Timothy movement coming. And I went, and instantly, you go in those like prophetic experiences, and I instantly understood that it was a play on words. That in 2007, there will be an explosion of a movement, a 2 Timothy movement coming. And it was a play on words, because in 1967, which I didn't understand this at the time, Timothy Leary rose up and became a guru for a hippie generation. But instead of being a reconstructive movement, it was a very destructive movement, destroying the morals, destroying the fiber, paving the way for birth control, abortion, free love, free sex, homosexuality. We're reaping that movement now. But that generation is coming to a close, like it's 67 and now 2007, and a 2 Timothy movement, which I believe is a reconstructive movement. And the interesting thing about Timothy, if you read 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, it's a generational movement. Timothy's mother was saved. Timothy's grandmother was saved. Paul said, I have no one so like-minded as my servant Timothy. Timothy walked with his spiritual father and his natural mothers. So this partnering of the generations to cause a movement of a great harvest.
So most of us have grown up in generations where either we served the Lord, or our parents did and we didn't, or our children won't and we do, or something. There's always this conflict. You're saying this is a convergence, generational, cross-generational,
an intergenerational movement that I'm seeing. That, like, when we started, we had Christians that were older than us, but we never walked together. We all forged our own movement for our own time. But I'm seeing this hunger in this generation to walk with fathers and mothers. I came back.